Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Onslaught Gaming OCS Training 4. So today we have a special one. We're going to talk entirely about the ATC American Team Championship. For those of you who are not familiar, originally it was from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we're going to have our special guest JD from Away Games, who runs the entire circuit. Um, how's everyone doing today?
Good.
Not bad
Awesome.
for a Tuesday.
Yes.
Say hello to the people. Say hello to the people. And as always, we like to do our hook.
Huh?
It's a very armyism thing. As the Air Force guy, I'm like, ugh. You know?
That's our war cry.
See,
That's our
it's
war
weird
cry.
because as the Air Force guy, we're like, y'all have a hua, and we're like, what's up? What's up? Right? Like,
Yeah, I should have everyone do their own war cry.
yeah.
That's most people's war cry.
Mine is, for Russ and the All-Father.
All right, so let's get started. For those of you who are watching, please make sure to provide us with any comments, questions you have. If you need any type of understanding of how ATC works, please speak up and speak loudly and give us a hook. All right.
Yeah.
So, hello, JD, and welcome to Onslaught Gaming OCS episode 4. Thank you for coming today, and thanks for all of your amazing work as always. Now, I'm going to have a lot of questions for you today. Some of them are going to get skipped because you might answer them during one of the questions. But the first one we want to start off with today in the navigation is, tell us a few things. How did ATC, or how did you get started with the whole ATC deal?
So ATC, so I originally went to ATC, my first one last year. And then we kind of came up with the idea of ATC circuit with the idea of bringing ATC events to other areas outside of Chattanooga, right? Because if you've talked to a lot of people in the community over the past, ATC has been doing it for about 15 years now, and like it's probably one of their favorite events that people go to, right? It was one of the first and only team events that they've done, but it's always a great time, and people had a blast doing it. And so the idea came about, well, how can we bring that environment, those teams, and everything to other areas rather than just do it once a year? And so I partnered up with Shane and Chris, the owners of ATC, to bring the ATC circuit. And so this year we're doing 3 events: the ATC Kansas, which we've already done, ATC North Carolina, which we've already done, and Florida, which are all basically feeder events to ATC, which is now called the NATC, the North American Team Championship. And then next year, at this year's NATC, we'll announce next year's schedule in circuit tournaments, and just kind of bring that aspect to different regions of the United States.
Love it. So ATC Florida, huh? So what is the ATC Florida looking like for you? I know this is the first time me and you are collaborating on this. We're going to do something special here.
Yes, sir.
In Florida, in Clearwater specifically, right? For those of you who are not aware of Florida, never been out here, traveling from afar, right? We're actually 12 miles away at the venue itself from the beach. I believe it's Indian Rocks Beach. So please make sure to bring your bathing suits, your family, let them go and have fun while you're out here playing some games.
It should be a great time. Like, again, I think me and you were speaking the other day about it. It's like, if you can find a venue that comfortably makes members of 40K enjoy it, but also their friends and family and everything, that they can go enjoy it, it's always like a win-win sort of thing.
Yeah.
And having that beach so close, and then having the area and the surrounding area be like family friendly is always a great thing too.
And you can get some easy wins because there's no good in Florida.
Actually, that's not what I've heard.
I mean, I don't know. It's always a great debate on which region, and we don't have to get into it tonight. But
well, that goes back to 2019. Some things that were said on the internet before Siegler and Lennon really took off, before Broerhammer won Best Team. There was a lot of talk down on Florida, but I think they've kind of proven that wrong in the last few years.
Well, luckily they'll hopefully be there this year, the next month or so. So they'll be bringing their team.
So let's talk to the people. Let's let them know what the ATC format is all about, and how can players get familiar with what they're going to be seeing April 13th and 14th in 2024 at ATC Florida.
Yeah, I mean, so the simplest format or answer is it's a 5-player team where a 5-player team plays with another 5-player team. It's 5 rounds. There's gonna be 3 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. It's a win-loss, the same bracket you would just as a singles, but now it's as a team. The coolest thing aspect of it, besides winning and losing together, is having your team there, right? So there's more aspects of if you go to any other event where it's just singles, you're winning and losing. I don't want to say by yourself, but like in that match by yourself, right? You can go visit your friends and see what's going on, but like that match is determined by you, if you will. When you look at team events, whether it be 5-man or 8-man, but specifically 5-man for ATC and ATC Florida, you're winning and losing together, where like your game matters more, I feel, than anything else. Because sure, like we've all been in some games where we want to win, and we're like, cool, I'll just win by 10. It doesn't matter, right? As long win's a win. Or hey, I'm losing. I'll call the game, and you can win by 90, right? It doesn't matter. But because teams are affected by every individual score, there's more into it. There's more involvement of simply my score matters, whether it's a close win or a big win or a close loss or a big loss. Like that affects how the team scores and then wins or loses the round.
And will you guys still be using the 20-0 like WTC scoring?
Yes, so we'll be using WTC scoring. The thing we always try to preach to people are like most people use a tabletop app. You can change it when you start building your I don't want to say schedule, but the breakdown for that weekend. You can click WTC scoring and you can see how it goes. So every player will have a 20-0 or kind of score sheet. So you'll still score your game, let's just say 90-70, but it breaks it down what WT scoring is. And then anything within 5 points is considered a tie individually, and anything within 9 points of a team is considered a tie. So realistically, you're trying to get more than 5 points to get like a 11-9 win, or anything higher than that. And it promotes like, hey, the bigger score, the bigger differences, it helps the team out. And then for the team itself, you're trying to get at least a 10-point win, because then it's not a tie. Now you will see a lot of ties in WCC format or teams format, and that's simply because there's this weird disparity of like, hey, Lewis could get a 20-0, and then Nick, you can get 0-20, and those kind of cancel each other out, and now it's kind of like 3-on-3, right? And you can get 15-5 on each side, and now it's down to like 1. But those scores do matter, because when pairings happen, you're looking for either that big win or keeping it close loss sort of thing. You're not simply going, oh, I just want to win or play. And that's some mistakes a lot of players make at the very beginning, at least as a team, is they just like, hey, I can play in the death guard. Cool. But it might not be like the best matchup, right? Whereas like, no, we need you to like, we all hate to say it, but jump on the Eldar, right? Or jump on, the bully, whatever it is, because you can keep it closer than a 20-0. You can keep it like a 15-5, which it doesn't sound like great saying 15-5, but that score could change what happens with the team. So.
Yeah, and the WTC scoring was something it took me a little while to get my head wrapped around when first doing it. Mm-hmm. So the way I found worked best for me is you don't start 0-0, you start 10-10, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And basically, once you're down by 6 points, it goes 11-9. So basically, after 6 points, then 11, then 16. So it's every 5 points after that shifts 1 point from you to your opponent, or 1 point from your opponent to you, until you get to 20-0.
Yeah. And I mean, that the good thing about that format is you can also, you'll see teams, and the better teams are the teams that actually work together, I'll say, right? Because you'll see a lot of teams that just play and we're playing as a team, but they're not working together. Yep. But, teams going like, how's it going? And you're like, not well, right? And you're like, cool, I know I need to score more points now, right? Or, hey, am I good to push? Like, can I, go hard in this army, or do I need to like play defensively? And so there's the aspect of not only do pairings matter and the army's matchup matter, but like the play style matters of like, me as a night player, I'd be like, oh, I just want to go ham. And like, there might be a matchup where like, no, we just need you to like score 60, right? We don't need you to score 100. We just need you to score 60. Because if you try to go ham and you lose, you're going to get, 20-0 sort of thing. So.
Well, yeah, because that's a good thing to know. Yeah, if you're in a tight game, they're like, hey, we need you to get us some points, and you push. If they're like, hey, we're good, don't lose too badly,
right?
You can play a little more. Yeah, so stuff like that, the guys that are still playing later on in the round can kind of determine what they need to do in the matchups.
Yeah, Matt, and you're an expert at that. Like every time that I played at ATC, Matt has always been the team captain, always done a phenomenal job. Actually, last year, right? We went. Correct me if
Last
I'm wrong.
year,
Or the year
yeah.
before that, 2 years
Well,
ago.
you and I have
I
gone
didn't see
together
you
2
last
years
year.
in
I'll
a
tell you
row.
that much.
Last year it was you, me, David, and the Double Johns. The year before that we had Nick, Jarrett, and
That's what it
actually
was.
John from Big Bear got sick and couldn't come, and we had the Ringer.
Yeah. Shout out to Big Bear as always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was supposed to come last year. I didn't see him last year.
Yeah, he's been having a lot of health problems lately.
Yeah.
Oh, that was this
Yeah.
year. Yeah, this year
Yeah.
he was supposed to come. He got sick. We had the Ringer.
Yeah.
And another thing, Lewis, I'll touch on it, and we were talking about ATC in general is, and I know we'll probably go round and round about so many things in ATC is also when players are building lists, right? As a team, you need to build lists that are it could be not the list you always play, like the all comers list. It's a very like, hey, I'm good at killing vehicles or I'm good at killing hordes, and that's another cool aspect I think of teams is like the list that you see at teams are not the list you see winning individuals and you see, on the Meta Mondays or anything. It's lists that are like tailored to, hey, I'll be a defensive player, and all I got to do is like score my 80 points, right?
Yeah.
And keep it close. Or I'll be the aggressive player, and I can go do this. Or, hey, can you deal with 300 bugs, right? Like put them in a Death Guard army, right? There's so many cool aspects about it.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, when you build your team, only one person can bring Eldar. Only one person can bring Knights. Like so. You're not going to have 5 of the top armies on a team. So you're most likely the top teams will have the couple good armies, but then they're going to have a couple weird skew lists that are designed just to counter those armies that they're going to try to pair into them. So you'll see lists that you won't see at singles events, and and you don't have to worry about playing if your team's doing well Eldar every round. If you have someone designed for Eldar, well, they're going to try to do it, so you don't necessarily have to have a counter Eldar in your list. You counter other things,
right?
Or you could have a guy like Matt who just throws himself under the bus every single match.
Well, that's because I built my list that year was built to lose close, so I was trying to jump on all the grenades.
Oh, it's fine. Redemptor Dreads are good now, right?
And it worked about half the time. And
unfortunately,
that was one of the years I actually had some issues with the terrain because the way they were able to butt pieces together really changed the line of sight from what we told it was going to be that year. So it really messed with a lot of people's lists. But that was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Last year we had the old Towering. We had the release version of Towering. That was a time.
Oh yeah. But actually,
Nick,
even with Towering, I liked the terrain last year.
Yeah. I like the terrain too. I'm just the majority of it, if you will.
Well, the train was okay. It was just rough. Like playing a 300 person event like that. Like it's rough with that old. It was the pre-September update, so it was the old Towering rule and all these. It was like the beta. It was like the beta version of the game.
Well, like ATC last year was like the first event of 10th almost, right? Like,
it really was.
I think 10th came out like 3 weeks later. We were, in it, and the worst thing was like we were waiting to see what the terrain would feel like, and all the Towering things happened, and we're like, cool, we have to change our terrain tonight to like. We didn't need 3-story buildings before, right? And you're like, well, how do you hide from a knight? We need 3-story buildings everywhere, right?
Well, that's happened to ATC a couple times. It was 8th edition. They had Index Hammer with like 800 Razor Wing flocks because the edition dropped like a month before the event. Like ATC seems to get caught with that a lot, just with when GW likes to drop it and when the original ATC was always scheduled.
Yeah. Well, I will say at least this year we've moved it to like mid-July. Because we used to be early June, and that's kind of like when all the editions dropped. We've now moved it to like mid-July, so at least gives us, I would say 4 to 6 weeks to like figure out what's going on before releasing. And again, bringing a whole new edition is always in itself a pain because it's like, well, what's legal and what's not, and what's the gray area and all the other things. So.
And everyone likes to complain about stuff like terrain and rulings and stuff at these big events, but you don't really understand what goes into running it and figuring it all out, especially last minute like they do. So I have a lot of appreciation for Shane and them, even though, I will complain every time. I'm a gamer, but they do a great job. Like ATC's, even when you have complaints, is one of the best events of the year.
I think they leveled up the train. Like in 2023, they leveled up the train a lot. It was a significant improvement over 2022. So it was really
That was all JD, right? That was all JD, I
It
believe.
wasn't all me. This is a team effort. I brought in some terrain, and then Brian Delgado out of the Green Dragon brought in some terrain. But expect like slowly but surely, as Away Games gets more and more sets of terrain, and we work closer and closer with ATC, we're hoping more and more Away Games terrain will be at ATC, and we can kind of get rid of that. I don't want to say old stuff, but the stuff that is past editions sort of thing. And again, that we've already talked about John from Big Bear. The greatest thing about his terrain is the modularity of like, hey, when we switched from 9th to 10th, we went from those 12-inch squares, everything was one big U, to more spread out terrain, if you will, the 6x12s, which I really enjoy. And luckily that our terrain was able to change to that. It's not going to say worrisome. It's worrisome as a TO, if you will, of like when you buy the MDF terrain and you're like, cool, this is it. And then 3 years later, it's not it anymore. Right. And it's like, hey, do I buy a whole new terrain or do I tear this apart? So having that modularity is great. So, but
hey, I don't have any complaints. When the terrain was, when you could put it like this, the footprints of it, I was playing Orcs. That was awesome. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Well, you only had, and I think you only had 2 layouts with 9th edition GW.
Yeah.
Right now we have 4, which feels better because like I remember when 10th or 9th edition with 2 layouts, it's like, well, which layouts day 1 and which layouts day 2, and like people could tailor armies like, well, all I got to do is like win my first 2 or 3 games, and then we go to layout 2, which I'm better at as a a melee army, if you will. So
yes. Yep.
And that works good with ATC with varied tables. Now you can have different settings on each one, which really plays into the choosing.
Because you only repeat. If you did all 4, you'd repeat 1. The only issue we ran into is we did an ATC, and most of our events only do 3 layouts, because if you look at that Leviathan companion, layout 2 is only used like maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
And if you use like a layout 2, it's usually not copacetic with like a layout 3 or 4.
Yep.
So we try to find those missions, which are already out there, by the way. If you're looking at ATC Florida, the missions are already posted, that correspond with layout 1, 3, and 4, and then we'll just repeat like a 3 or 4 or 1 twice, and that's how we get around that.
Yeah, because that's real important. Because I think almost every round you'll hear someone say, "Can you fight this?" And they'll be like, "If I do it on this table."
Yeah, and that's another, and we'll probably get into the pairing process later, Lewis. But like that's another cool aspect of pairing is like you roll off, and like as a defender, you're like, hey, I'm going to defend on table 3 because I know table 3. I understand what table 3 is, and I understand we're doing a sweeping engagement with 5 objectives and this and that. Cool, I can do that. And that's like that next level of when you come to pairing is like not only you have your army and like what you're good against, but what map am I good against, and then not only that, but what mission is on the map that I'm good against. So.
All right. So Nick wanted to present something real quick.
Yep.
Oh yeah. So this is just what JD was talking about, the differential scoring. So this is probably the biggest thing you'll have to know for
take screenshots,
for
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically how this works is exactly what he said. This is a differential system. The easiest way to think about this is when you start playing, it starts at a 10-10 draw, which is I think what Matt said. So based on the final battle points result of your game, so you'd have a differential of 0 to 5 is just a draw. So for example, like a 95-90 would be a draw, or a 55-50 or something. And then it goes all the way, it scales all the way down, and you gain points and lose points. So 13-7, 16-4, and so on. And then the highest margin of victory would be a 20-0, which would be like 100 to 49, a 51 point victory. So you've got
so that's the differential of the two, correct?
Yeah. And go ahead, Matt. Go ahead, Nick.
No, you're it.
Oh, you're it. What I was going to say is it breeds like the idea of like never give up in your game, right?
Yeah,
because you could be losing by 30 points, right? But if you lose by 31, it's not a 16-4 rather than 15-5, right? And at the same time, like a lot of people, winning or losing might be like, I'm not worried about turn 5, but turn 5 could change things, right? And I've seen games where, hey, you drew 2 cards that you could score even though you were losing, and you went from a 17-3 to like a 14-6, right? And that changed the whole team either winning, tying, or losing. Right. So there is that buy-in of like, I need to play all the rounds and score as many points as possible versus like, no, I'm losing, I'm done sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's also I mean, it happens occasionally, but sometimes you'll get a really good player into a newer player in like a singles event, and they'll beat them 100-0. Like, you don't do that.
Right.
You don't need to do that. If you're beating them 80-30,
Right.
that's all you really, or 85-30. That's all you really need. You don't need to kill their last unit or deny them that last object just to be a douche like you would be in a singles where differential might matter more, or like your total score. Like, if you know you got the 51 points in the bag, you don't have to be as hardcore that last turn on somebody.
Correct.
Yep.
And there's another thing I'd like to point out here is that the list construction. I think JD mentioned this. The list construction varies because you're objective. You're not just trying to win the game. You're trying to accomplish like a certain points goal, right? So that means like the army that you actually bring is going to be different. Sometimes it'll be different than what you see in singles. And I guess I want to use two examples here. So like you see 10-10 draw. In a lot of cases, 10-10 draw is actually good. Because it not only are you're scoring 10 for the team, which is just the average, you're not giving them anything. So there's two armies in particular right now that are really going to lean into 10-10 draw in order to sustain their team and put their good players in the better matchups. And those two armies, I'm going to say Death Guard and Sisters. They have lots of resources to kind of stalemate the game, especially Death Guard are really good at stalemating out the game and forcing a draw.
Well, your defensive army is like that. You want to get into the opponent's good army that they're expecting to get them 20 points.
Yeah.
If you get them down to like 12, 11, 10 points, that's actually a huge win for your team because you took one of their high scorers down to basically a draw. And if your high scorers still do their job, you're really up on the round.
Yeah. And that goes in the pairings, right? Of like, who do I want to put in my defender, right? Who do I want my attackers to be? And even when I put my attackers forward, who do we think that they're going to pick, right, of the two attackers? Because sometimes you just put attacker out there knowing that they're not going to pick the Eldar matchup, so they're going to pick, something else. And you put them into something where it is a difficult decision of like, do I want to play the Eldar on Eldar Mirror, or do I want to play in the Death Guard and see if I can, get instead of a 15-5 a 10-10 draw.
So yeah, JD, if you want to expand on the pairings now, you could do so since we're already talking about that. If you want to kind of break down to the players how exactly that works when people drop their first list, how exactly their opponents that they're playing with, how that works. Go ahead and expand on that if you don't mind, please.
Yeah. So I mean, simple enough is we require every team to bring at least a written or a print off list. So when you do get paired to your team, you should be handing those 5 lists. Hopefully, it's just 1 page long. 5 lists to the team you're playing, and vice versa. And you all take about 5 to 10 minutes to go over what the lists are, right? Because in the end, we all, when the lists do open up, we all go look, but we don't know exactly until like we're playing again. So you have to kind of take that, 5-10 minutes to go over the list that your opponents have, and you go talk to your team like, what do you want to play in? What are you good at? What do you want to stay away from? Because those are like the 2 key questions you always ask is like, what do I want to play into? And like, what do you steer me away from? Because, as long as that team gets a buy-in, there's other teams that are like, we don't care. We'll just, take on anything. But it is key to like know, what you're good at and what not. After about 5 or 10 minutes, you guys kind of come back together and then, give the list back. The ATC, so this year we started at ATC Circuit and you'll have it at ATC proper, the NATC this year, is we give you pairing cards. So you'll have these your 5-team pairing cards are they basically Magic the Gathering size cards, and you'll have a Magic the Gathering size placemat where you have your pairings. So once you roll off, whoever wins gets to pick their first terrain set. So you'll have like we just talked about, like, let's just say layout 1, 3, 4, then 3, 4 again. So you'll pick whatever table you want, and then you'll put your defender down, right? So it's face down. And then the person who lost the roll-off will pick the second set of terrain that they want and set their defender down, right? So now they're face down, and you kind of know where you're defending at. You'll flip those over, and those are the 2 things that you need to send attackers into. So you'll have 4 cards left because you put one of your defenders down, and of those 4 cards, you'll pick 2, again, face down to go against their defender, and vice versa. And once those 2 are down, they'll be flipped up simultaneously, and you'll have your 2 attackers and your 2 defenders. Your 2 attackers on each of the defenders. The teams will then decide which attackers, and they do this privately, which attacker they want. They'll put the face down what attacker they want, and there's a whole pairing map process for this. And they'll flip it over, and then those will be your pairings for game 1 and game 2. So of those 2 attackers, you'll have selected which one you want to play against, and then you'll know where table you're playing at, what your defender was, and what your attacker was. And so now you're left with 3 cards, right? And then you'll go down that same path of like, so I picked, then you picked. I'll pick the terrain again. You'll get to pick the terrain again. You'll do the defender the same way we did before. The attackers the same way before. It's all simultaneously. And then that last pairing is just like the cards are left over, right? Because it's 5 and because it's an odd number, once you do that last 2 attackers and you pick your other one, you only have 1 card left. And those are going to the last table. And that's like the simplest way to explain it. We have a breakdown of it in the player packet with kind of a step-by-step 1 through, I think it's like 7 steps. We also have some images of what the pairing card looks like in the pairing mat. And by all means, if you have any questions, call us over and we'll help you out. But it's very simple because I will say, like, while I enjoy 8s is more complicated because there's an even number of teams.
Yep.
So there's a weird one where like the last pairing of 8s happens before pairing 5, 6, and 7 happen. But luckily with odd numbers at 5s, the last one just automatically fills itself because there's no other pairings you can do. But again, that's key when it comes to pairings because as you're down to your last 3 cards, you know kind of what they have because you know what armies they have and they have their attacker defender out. And you can go, cool, we know we're going to put this defender out. Hopefully they put the 2 attackers we want. And we know the other 2 cards are going to get matched up, and that's a good or bad matchup for us.
I had a question. You're saying, so when you put your defender down, you pick the terrain at that point?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
I know in the past, after you got the matchup, then the defender would get.
Yeah.
So,
so what we try to do now is like what you're going to defend on is what you're right. Like so you roll off and go. I'm putting my defender down, and I want this table.
Cool.
Right.
So that's actually a big change that people will have to pay attention to because you.
Yeah.
So. You don't get to choose after you know what you're fighting, but
I think it's sometimes a good change in the sense of as a defender, you know what you want to defend on, and at the same time, and it helps
I'm not
out
bashing. I'm just saying that's people will just have to change their mindset on that a little bit.
Yeah,
so it definitely probably speed it up.
Yeah,
a lot of times someone would take like 5 minutes to figure.
Yeah, and that's the thing we saw. Going forward was like.
Yeah.
Say me and you get paired up, and you're the attacker and I was the defender. Then I'm standing there for 5 minutes going, "What table do I want?" Right? And like, hey, what's the other pairing might be, and this and that. Yeah. And this is it's kind of eliminates that going, "Hey, I just want to play on table 1."
Yeah.
Right?
I think that is a good change for speed. It's just, definitely something you have to take into consideration.
Yeah. And I will say on timing wise. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
You just alternate, right? After the first. Yes. And you just alternate after the first. Okay, got it.
Yep. So you have one initial roll off, and then we call it snake. So it's snake. So like again, if I win and you didn't, Nick, so I'll pick table 1, you'll pick table 2, basically. I'll pick 3, you'll pick 4, then 5 just fills itself out because it's your own.
Yeah. So it'd be like A, B, B, A, and then left over.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
All right.
I like that.
Yeah,
I do like that too.
Again, it's just one roll off, and then after that. It just snakes. I will say so. We also provide a roll-off dice for every player, so then there's no disparity of like, I have my lucky gold dice that always rolls 6s, and this is how I win all the roll-offs. So we'll give you all a team 5 dice. The team captains will roll off, use that dice, and then for all your attacker, defender, and then your first turn, you'll use that dice. Yep. For all that. So then it kind of eliminates that whole, like, again, my gold lucky dice. This will happen.
Honestly, I think you want to lose that roll because you have 5 options to begin with. Whoever gets to pick the second round, they only have 3 options. So you really dictate a little more, I think. Yeah.
And it's always, I'd say 50-50. Some people want to lose. Oh, yeah. They want to pick 2 and 4 knowing, 5 kind of fills out itself. And other people want that. No, I get to pick, the first. But I will say, in our format, because we're only using 3 layouts, so again 1, 3, 4, you'll have 2 layouts that are doubled. So realistically, like just say 1 is the only one that's a 1. That's might be somebody's. I want to roll off first and get that.
That's true. If your defender only has 1 table they want, then then you do want that first roll.
Yeah. So again, it just switches.
It varies.
And again, it's one of those cool things about teams. It's like there's so many kind of ways you could do things and go about
absolutely.
Things.
No, did you say the winner has to go first defender, or they choose?
So they have to go first. So if you roll off and get a 6, you're picking you're placing your defender, but you're picking the first table.
Got it.
Right? Because we don't want to go back to almost 8th or 9th edition where it's like I win the roll off, you get to do things first,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. The only time that happens now is I found out, and Lewis, you probably know all your TOs is if you have 2 orc players. So because they wog,
they had to roll
outside of a battle round, you have to roll off because of sequencing, and then the winner gets to pick who gets to wog first.
That's a good
which
one.
is crazy. So.
Mozrogs scrag bagging each other in the middle.
you go first.
Nick, don't talk dirty on here.
Hey, I don't even know what a Wurzog gut snag is or whatever.
It's bad to somebody somewhere.
Wurzog in the chocolate factory.
So you talked a little bit about the mission or about the layouts. So just a little bit of clarity so everyone's aware. We know that it's in the packet. Should everyone be reading and paying attention to the BCP links to make sure that they're understanding the correct layouts and missions? And what exactly are the missions for the weekend for us?
Yep. So I'll pull up my little cheat sheet on missions. So the missions that we are running this weekend. Where is it? That's some nice new music. It is A, E, F, M, and O, and it will be in that order. So it's A, E, F, M, O. The one caveat to that is, so E is the one mission where you have the objectives that you place. The center objective will stay, and then you'll only place 2. Again, I think that's probably the most fair. I've gone to some events that are like, nope, this is the Wild West, 3 2s. But having that center one just kind of levels the playing field, because again, if you could place 3 objectives, I know at the very beginning of the edition there was like this triangle where you could just place 3 and you're like, cool, this is where I live and stay and score all my points.
The crazy thing was you actually rolled off for side after that.
Yeah.
So you're setting that up. If you set that up, you're hoping you're 50-50 and win the roll. You could be setting that up for your opponent.
Yep, you could be.
We talked about that a lot. It was
because I don't think people first started playing didn't realize that. They thought they stayed on their side, but no.
Yeah,
but people who did
if you skew it like that, there's a 50-50 chance you just set that up for the other person.
Yeah. I mean, and some players are like that. Like, I'm going to win this roll up, and I'll throw my stuff.
Especially in teams, if you're in the bad matchup, go for it. You're probably gonna lose anyway. Maybe you'll get more points, keep the score closer if you pull it off.
Yeah,
the win percentage for that too was around 74% for whoever was taking that side as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. It was a crazy number.
But I think most of the TOs and most of the events have now said, I think it's E and N are the 2 like chosen battlefield ones that are keep the center objective and just place 2.
Yeah,
so.
I think that's the best way to do it for competitive play.
I think so too.
I mean, we got all those. We got all
Nick.
the banger missions. We've got supply drop, then purge the foe, then vital ground. Like it's gonna be a time. It's gonna be a Warhammer moment.
I mean, we tried to put that in mind.
Yeah.
Purge the foe. That's the old ITC missions. Kill, hold.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a throwback to 8th edition, baby.
It is a throwback.
That's another thing I love about the missions this edition is they're so much more varied than before.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just stay away from like Serval Skull, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I like playing soccer. Soccer is actually one of my favorite games. I love playing that mission.
It was very confusing in the beginning. You're like, wait, so I'm pushing it that way, even though he gets a score? And you're like, yeah, because you're trying to score.
And then you don't have to be near it. You score based on where it's at. So you don't actually have to control. Yeah, it's.
Yeah. That and
we're sticky.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I can't even think of the mission now. I have to pull it up where you create them while you're playing. So you have that center objective.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the ritual, you just pop them out as you go. But it has to be exactly 9 away.
Yeah.
Right, but then nobody tells you that you can do it from your home objective until it's a big brain move. You're like, wait a second. So that's
the one where they randomly disappear, so you could be set up, and that one.
Alpha and Omega.
Gone. Yeah,
I've definitely played some games, particularly one at Nova where it happened, where I had my knights and I was like just around this objective, and the guy was running the other one. And like round 4, he goes, "Why are you over there?" I'm like, "Because this is the one that stays." He's like, "I thought this one stayed." I'm like, "No, this one." He's like, stays. "Oh, okay, right." And that one of the games.
It's funny because you mark the first one to leave, and then you mark the one that doesn't leave.
Yeah,
so, that's very confusing. You'd think you mark the 2 that are disappearing. No,
Yeah.
A lot of people do get that confused too because they think the Omega leaves at the end and it doesn't. It just stays there all game long.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. The one who's not marked is basically.
Yeah.
Right, which is weird because you see that I mark this one, it leaves. I mark this one, it stays. That's like
yeah. That one. I think that one's exciting. Warfare. It's exciting for teams because only one person can have that 15 at the end. Really, I don't think it lets both players have the 15. So it's going to.
No, I like those because they force you to have mobile, adaptable lists. There's no more just gunline hammer like there was. I don't know if it was 8th edition or where you just sit in the back and just shoot all game.
Yeah, I did play
people the opportunity to come back too at the end of the game. So
yeah.
And I know Nick, you're probably looking at all the missions and everything, piecing it together. And so we tried to make it to where we use at least 4 different deployments. So hammer and anvil, sweeping engagement, crucible battle, and then whatever the last one is. Which one did I miss? Sweeping, crucible, hammer, and then Dawn of War. Yeah. So you get to play all 4. And again, like, we talked about pairings and all that. It's like Dawn of War, you might be like, man, Dawn of War on, layout 3 is great for me, but not great for, some other army. And that's the kind of thing, the aspect of like how all the missions play into it all.
Yeah, that's funny to me. That's one of the deployments like a lot of the newer player hate. But I started back in 2nd edition for a long time. That was the only deployment.
Yeah, I mean, I started in 8th, so I'm not nearly as as old playing as you.
You're not nearly as old as me.
But there was only hammer and anvil and like Dawn of War, right? Like there was only kind of 2.
Well, originally there was just Dawn of War.
Well, we didn't even call it them. Remember, it was like hot dog and hamburger. Like, which one are we doing? The hot dog or the hamburger?
And then there was tacos.
Yeah.
It didn't used to even have a name. It was just you deployed 12 inches on. Like that was it. 24
I was like, I'm just hungry now. What are you guys doing? Yeah.
I mean, I will say like I do miss seizing because that was just like a great thing of like, all right, I'm just gonna roll this dice. If I get 6, your whole game plan's ruined.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I hated it when it was one person deployed their whole army, then the other person deployed their whole army, and then could seize. Like that was like when it was alternating, so you could still deploy defensively. And then seize. It didn't bother as much. But when it was all deploy, then seize, it was a problem.
And the funny thing is, you couldn't not seize. You had to roll a dice, so you could play as defensive as you wanted, like behind every building.
Yep.
You roll and you seize, and you're like, I didn't plan for this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Kate's got a question for you.
Yes.
The parent card sounds sweet. What happens if a team doesn't bring printed lists?
We hope and pray that they all bring it. We haven't have to give a yellow card out yet because every team has been amazing and great and showed up with lists.
So you hear that? Just bring it.
Yeah, we highly recommend it. Hopefully the hotel too will probably have a printer that we can do it. The key thing is like it's you could simply go, hey, what team is it, and go through the app and look at all the lists. But because it's teams and because it's 5, it's so much easier to just have that paper list because it's 5, sheets of paper to go through than it is to go, what's your team? All right, I'm going to go down Lewis's list. All right, and I'm going to go down Nick's list. I'm going to go down Matt's list. Just having that paper is so much quicker. And I will say the rounds are 3.5 hours long, so 3 hours and 30 minutes. So that first 30 minutes is simply pairing time. So it's going over lists. It's doing all the pairing process and like going over all the lists that you would be playing against, and then you'll have a 3-hour round for that. We do say there is hard dice down, so if you don't get that 3 hours in, the score is a score. There's no playing through it. And so we encourage every game to go. And again, because it's a team format, you're encouraging every game to actually finish. Because like if a game goes 2 or 3 rounds and the score's 45 to 55, and it could have been 95 to 45 or 55. That's great, but because you can't score the last 2 rounds, especially we were just talking about, the Alpha and Omega one where somebody can get 15 on there. If you don't get there, you don't get those points at Battle Round 5 because that's another thing they cleared up in the rules and all the Leviathan cards is like in round 5 you get all these things. It doesn't say hey at the end of the game. So if you never get to round 5, you don't get these bonus points.
That's right.
And I'd say if you don't bring your list, your opponent just gets to make all the pairings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could also do like a all-in blind thing, and everybody just puts these 5 cards down and goes, "Cool, let's do this." So,
please bring your list.
I will say though,
everyone brings their list.
Yes, we do hope. I will also say so. for ATC circuit and then hopefully at ATC as well, we're trying to do round prizes for teams as well. So there'll be like fun kind of things for teams to win by doing certain things. One of our favorites that we did at North Carolina and Kansas was like the first team to each player lose a character in that game, gives a shout out and we give them prizes, right? So like, it's easy for sisters to be like, hey, go get those 3, miracle dice for me. But like as a knight player, it might be like, do I really want to sacrifice this one character to like get this prize? But it's a fun thing for teams to do and track it. And again, it's all about building those teams together of like, hey, have you lost a character? Have you lost a character? Are we in the running for this? Or, no, you're not in the running for it. So.
And are you guys allowing like coaches or like they do some
Yep.
like the extra
Yep. So we allow coaches. So that's basically like your 6th member. Yeah. They're not like in the BCP, if you will, but they can do all the tracking purposes and all that. Yeah. Coaches, there's a whole list of what coaches are allowed to do and not do. They're not allowed to give any tactical advice like, hey, you should probably like go here, but they are allowed. Like one of the main things is like, hey, Matt's not doing well, right? Yeah. You need to go score points. Or, hey, Lewis is crushing it. Just keep this one close, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't tell them how to get the points, but you can tell them they need to get the points.
Yeah. And you can't even say like, hey, Lewis is score. You're not supposed to technically go
the
like,
exact
hey,
score,
80 to 60, right?
Yeah.
But you can say, hey, Lewis is winning or losing and give that kind of thing. And then as well as coaches are very good at like calling over judges if they need something. Yeah. And then helping any other things that they can. We had a player at ATC North Carolina, shout out to Frank, who had hurt his like clavicle arm elbow thing like a week before. And so his coach actually helped him. I don't know why I'll make fun of the team because it's hilarious. The team chose the guy with the arm in a sling to play Tyranids with like 200 Termagants. And I was like, why would you put him on that list? It all worked out for him.
Because they
wanted to see him suffer.
Like
it's okay. He could just play 160 catch hands. It's fine.
Yeah. You could do like, I'll just do the 4 big knights and call it done. 160 Termagants.
So we haven't touched on any WTC. We know we're going to be using it at the event. So tell the folks exactly what might be a little bit different. What can they expect at the ATC Florida?
Yep. So I will say I'm biased because I think WTC is kind of the way to go when it comes to rule sets. Not simply because they're the best rules or best FAQ. I think it's because it's easiest to find and easiest to like read and understand, right?
Yes.
I will always say, like, if you said, hey, show me the
There's a lot of support for it, too. There's a lot of support.
Yeah. Like, they update it as quickly as they can when things come out. But, like, if you said, hey, for example, like, there's a region that says, hey, we have our own FAQ. Well, where is it? I got to go find it and all this other stuff. WTC is so much easier. And also, they answer some questions that might not have ever come up. But they're like, hey, before you even go down that route, here it is. So if you go to the WTC website, you can find the rule set we use. I think they're on change 2.2 for February. And then it's also listed in the BCP as well as the player packet. Some of the big things that, are changes for people is, I will say, I'll caveat this. The only rule that we don't follow with WTC is WTC does infinite walls. That's so right. In the sense of if a wing's hanging over a wall, technically he can't be there because the wall is infinitely high and that wing can't go over. The one rule we play is like true line of sight. So if you are in a wall and your wing's hanging over, you could shoot or be shot by said wing. And that just kind of clears up. A lot of their ruins are 3, almost 4 stories tall. So it's easier to hide a Magnus. Most of ours are 2 stories tall. So it would be unfair if the guy wanted to bring a Magnus or Mortarion and hid behind a wall, touching it, but he then gets blasted because he thinks it's infinitely high.
I always imagine Magnus like this anyways, cowering. So
yeah.
I mean, he's in the back until he's going to be in the back until that one turn where he just moves 48 inches and it's all over.
Well, if you put Magnus where he can be seen, that's what Magnus did wrong.
Yes.
Maybe.
One of the many things.
I will caveat though, because we're talking about Magnus and Mortarion, like because they're monsters, you don't measure their wings if they're not touching a ruin, as in touching. It's only the base. I think ATC last year, and then they've kind of adopted that. I always call it the meme saying is like, if it goes vroom vroom, which is a vehicle, if anything is touching the plastic or overhanging it, it can be shot. If it's a regular person or a monster, it can't. So that's another key thing of like, if you have a Land Raider and it has a little sponson and it goes over and touches the, I call it the plastic, but goes over and touches the plastic, you've now opened that up. If Magnus's wing is just hanging over the plastic, you haven't opened it up because you're measuring to his base and all that other stuff. Unless he goes and touches it, then you talk about true line sight and all the other things. So that's the one thing we don't follow. I think it's line 4 of their terrain layout is infinitely high walls. Everything else we follow. And the big thing we saw, so I just TO'd or head judge / TO'd ATC, which was the first 8-man event in North America. And it was basically the first time we used WTC rules with their new charging, which is a 2-inch barrier and all that. I will say,
document.
Yeah, I will say it looks daunting because it's 12 pages you have to read.
Right.
Realistically, it's like 4 pages that are reading, and the other like 8 are pictures, which help that out a lot. But that's a big thing people have to learn. And the biggest thing I will say from that whole packet is there's no more like existing in walls, if you will. They've kind of removed that to now you're just fighting as a barrier. So like, even if like before you'd be like, oh, I existed in this wall, you don't exist in that wall anymore. You now fight to the wall and they fight to the wall. And like the tokens are the biggest thing is like who can fight and who can't. And that again is a document you can see in WTC, but that's probably the biggest area I'd say people need to like read and understand, especially if they're a melee army, like your warriors out there and your orcs, is like how that interaction happens and like who can actually fight and who can't fight.
Right.
I love that you guys had that broadcast on YouTube. I was watching because you guys had all the cards and everything for ATC. So they had a really nice camera like on the during the pairing process. So
yeah, shout out Trevi Tactical Tortoise.
Yeah.
Shout out Trevi, hell yeah.
Yeah.
It was really well
so
done.
he'll be at ATC Florida.
Yes, he will.
Yep. So we'll be streaming ATC Florida. Tactical Tortoise and Trevi will do all that. We'll do basically the same thing. He'll have a camera on the table that is doing pairings with our Magic the Gathering style pairing mats and our cards and all that. So you'll be able to see that pairing process as well as I think before. But the cool thing is he had that kind of intro video of like how pairings work and what you should be expecting when it comes to pairings and all that. So
yeah, it's very very knowledgeable guy. So
and you said this event's doing the pipes, like it's doing the WTC.
Pipes. So it's doing the barrier pipes where you have the 2 inches. The biggest like foot stomper, knock on wood, foot stomper for all this military folk is like you need the tokens because there was a couple instances I walked over and like, well, I want to know who's fighting who, and I'm like, well, where are your tokens? And they're like, well, we didn't put any tokens down. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to know how this started, sort of thing. So having those tokens, whether it be dice, chips, whatever you want to use, saying who is actually going to fight and who's actually going to be involved in combat is a big key takeaway.
So just to let everyone know as well, there's going to be a captain's meeting early that morning. JD,
yes.
You want to let them know what time that's going to be, what that might include exactly, so all the captains are aware and the players and participants?
Yep. So 2 things on that. We have a captain's Discord that's ran by ATC. I've sent the email out to all the captains that were, part of the event this morning. I think since then we've added 3 captains since then. So there's an actual captain's Discord to where you can go ask any question you want. You can, talk to anybody you want. Talk to the judges, talk to other teams. The cool thing is it's all about community. So talking to other teams, like, hey, where are you staying? Like, where are we going to eat? Like those sort of things. It's my first time here. Like, what should I do? Sort of thing. Lewis is in there, so he can probably answer all the Tampa questions, but also like the rules questions, and then like any kind of gray areas or like, how are you ruling this? Like, I'll give you, for instance, ATC North Carolina. The question was like, well, how are you ruling double orders on the guard? Like, what are they called? I can't even think of what the the troop, whatever they can get two orders, right? And it said like you can take, no, that's the Gaunt's Ghost, Karasikan, whatever the
Karsikan, yeah.
Where they can get an order, and then you can also get any other order. The question was, well, what is any other? Can you get the same order twice? Can you get move twice? And we had to go through and say, hey, no, you can't. But those are the questions that will help teams and captains build a list, right? Like, if I think this is a gray area, when I think it could get ruled one way or another, ask that question, right? So that day you show up, your team is like, well, I thought 18 flyers was a good idea. That sort of thing. And then so the Discord is everywhere to chat and talk and any updates we do with ATC leading up to the event. And then that Saturday morning, we'll have a captain's meeting. I believe it's at 9 o'clock or maybe 8 o'clock. It's an hour before the meeting. And that's where we can go over any kind of terrain questions that you had now that you're seeing the terrain, any questions, rule questions that you have, and like any other things that you'll want to bring up. I will say most of the questions are usually answered prior to that. There are some gray area questions that are answered out loud. But I think at NTC North Carolina, our last one, there was like 2 questions. And that's simply like, hey, bringing everybody together. Let's go over some things. How do you rule in this? Cool. We all know. Go from there. So.
That's good. Yeah, it's good for everybody to ask early because I know at the original ATC, someone would always try to gotcha the judges last minute in the captain's meeting, and we ended up delayed for an hour while all the captains are in the hall yelling at each other.
Yeah, yeah. Which
someone tries to do that every year.
Yeah, we haven't done that since. I think Discord has really helped that out with like getting those questions in early. But B, having knowledgeable judges and then knowing that we've been doing this in a while helps. And then as Lewis knows, we have an officiating chat with the U.S. Wargaming Federation that has some of the best judges from all the areas in there. So if there's a question that we don't know or don't have a good answer to, we sometimes reach out to them and say, hey, what are y'all ruling? Like the WTC judges are in there, the Frontline Gaming judges are in there. Just everyone. Great individuals. So it's not just simply us going, all right, because I will say, even with my judging is somebody could be like, hey, can I do this? And I'm like, that's 99% yes, but I'll take a look again. Right. Because it could be like, hey, can I, shoot over this wall? I'm like, absolutely. Like, are you sure? And the second they say, are you sure? I'm like, I'll go look one more time. But
you second guess yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care how long you've been playing the game. I still, every once in a while, someone will tell me something. I'm like, no, then we'll look it up and we're like, oh, technically, me and my whole area have been doing that wrong for 2 years.
Yeah. My big aha moment was bodyguard. I didn't realize that you could like every wound went on the bodyguard unit regardless of like, mortar wounds getting out of vehicle or whatnot. And like, it was a save. The guy was like, hey, can I take a 2-up save? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Because he was taking it on like Calgar or something. And then you come to find out like, no, you can't because the bodyguard unit's there and you have to kill that bodyguard unit before you can do it. The Victrix Guard are different because that's a character unit, but like the aggressors are attached to it or whatever. You have to kill all those off if you will before.
Yeah, mine
correct.
Was
otherwise precision would have no meaning or use.
Yeah.
Yeah, heroic intervention with fly was what got me.
Yeah.
We played it for the whole edition up till that one ATC that you could fly when you heroic intervention.
Yeah.
But come to find out you can't. And we're like,
it's the same thing with you can move over your own models in the movement phase, right? But you can't do it in charge phase. It says
no, you cannot.
You can't. Well, fly you can in the charge
fly you can. But we're talking about
you can do it in the movement phase. You can do it in the charge phase.
Yeah.
But technically, it didn't say in heroic intervention. But we just saw you could do it every other time. Didn't catch that it wasn't mentioned there. So our whole area had been playing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, this is why we have this show, right? So we can talk about these complex things and make everyone else aware. Yeah, exactly. No, thank you for making everyone aware.
Everyone always finds little stuff like that every year.
And I mean, I would say like it helps TOs and judges because like it might be a gray area you've never heard before, right? And you're like, cool. What are you trying to do again, right? Like again, we're talking about fly, right? Can you if a character has fly but your whole unit doesn't, can that unit charge something with fly? Technically, it can, but the guy who has a fly keyword is the only one who can fight. So like. The funny enough is like Rubik's with like a sorcerer on a disc attached to him. He can go fight a plane if he wants, but he's the only one swinging, even though like the Rubik's are attached to that said unit. So it's crazy.
They're just watching him cheerleading.
What if he grabs their hand and lifts them up?
Come on up. We're within engagement range.
It doesn't work like that. Not entirely. It doesn't work.
But yeah, I mean that's what we follow for WTC. Again, they've got some good rulings and they got some good updates that goes on in there. And if you have any WTC questions, we're happy to answer what we can. And again, if you get them in early, it's way easier to answer it then than it is like on the spot. So
that's right, and that's why we're hoping too. There's only 2 questions or maybe zero questions, so you can have them answered already before the event. Make sure to go to BCP. Away games, ATC Florida, to make sure you check out the packet. All of the links are there. If you need registration, they're there as well. Make sure to contact me and JD if you want to be one of the mercs and want to get on a team. We're trying to get people who are just merking up together, creating a team, or just adding additional people to a team. So it's going to definitely be a spectacle, especially with Trevi being there. We're going to have Hobby Goblins with their props, their show, their artistic side of things, which I love very much. So they bring a very flavorful ambiance to the event as well. Also, shout out to Baron of Dice. I believe we're going to have Baron of Dice there, not himself, but his actual dice there as well.
That's the plan for the roll-off dice. Yep. And then we'll have all the sponsors that Away Games brings, whether it be Army Painter, Table War. We'll have some good props. We'll have a bunch of prizes to give out. We'll have the ATC trophies. The trophies will be for first, second, third, best general, best painted. We'll also have the sportsmanship award, and again, some random prizes throughout all the rounds that take place. So,
I love it.
Something else, but I couldn't remember what it was, Lewis. I got lost in your eyes.
I have that effect on people.
Oh, I know what I was going to say is, so right now we're at 15, almost 16 teams. I think we're capped at about 20 teams, so there's only 4 or 5 tickets left. So if you're waiting to, get that last ticket, it might get taken before you get a chance. So don't miss that opportunity to play ATC in Florida. And again, if it goes well, we've already talked about bringing ATC Florida again next year, and then make it like a permanent fixture, if you want, on the ATC circuit.
We love that. And thank you for the opportunity to be a part of that. Absolutely.
No, thank you.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
You're the one who put this together, Lewis. You're the one, that helped out with finding the venue and event and bringing ATC to Florida. So shout out to you, man.
Just everyone knows, right? And if they're not aware, I try to bring the best things to our Floridians, to kind of harp on the statement you had earlier. We Floridians are arrogant, so we do think that we're the best in the meta.
We'll find out. We'll find out.
We're gonna find out April 13th, April 14th. Yeah. So hopefully, and if Florida doesn't win, I'm gonna find them in the parking lot.
Well, I mean, the greatest thing too is like I don't know if we hit on it. I know I didn't. Is like, so this event, the first place team wins a golden ticket to ATC.
That's
so we'll
right.
have 3 teams basically from the circuit this year that won a golden ticket to go to ATC this year, and then rep, as well as there's a point tracker with the best overall team from the circuit. So if you have a team that hit all 3 and scored well, and you only had a team hit 2 but won first place both times, they could possibly win the circuit. So at ATC this year, or in ATC, there will be an announcement of the overall winner of ATC, the event, and then the overall winner of the ATC circuit, which you'll get prizes for that as well.
Which I like how they're doing it this year, because if someone wins it, they don't have an opportunity to win it. Correct me if I'm wrong, JD, but they don't have an opportunity to win it at the finals, which allows someone else to win it in the finals.
Yes, but that will be next year, 2025. This year the golden tickets are just going to the 5-man, right? Mm-hmm. So like they could play in the 5-man and win that. If we're talking about ATC or in ATC 2025, all the winners will be in kind of a winners column, and then there'll be 2 kind of separate pools of, hey, the winners can only win this thing, and then everybody else who hasn't qualified can go win the in ATC as well.
Which I like a lot. It gives other people the opportunity, right?
Yep.
Shout out to Art of War. Speaking of teams, right? Yeah, to win a lot.
Yeah. So the original ATC, that's going to be like the end of the year for the ATC circuit. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Right. Yeah. So they're imagine that it's all part of a circuit, right? And there's ways to win it. This is the way we kind of make it where if teams want to compete at all 4, there's a goal or achievement in mind, rather than I just went to all 4 and that's all there is. And then again, we'll announce ATC circuit next at in ATC this year. We're hoping for 4 events this year, or this 2024-2025. We'll announce it there, and then we'll do exactly the same thing.
So it's 4 events, including the original ATC, or 4
So
events?
It'll be 5 events to include in the ATC next year. This year it's 4 because you had Kansas, Nebraska, or Kansas, North Carolina, Florida, plus the NATC.
Cool.
Yes.
So, yeah. And we think that's for the record, like 5 or 6 events.
Yeah. for the record, ATC Chattanooga, Tennessee has always been my favorite event.
Oh, yeah.
So please, for those of you who have not signed up, right, registered, make sure you do so. It's going to be a very similar, if not exact experience, right? It's more about the camaraderie, hanging out with your friends, building relationships and things like that, coming to check out Hobby Goblins, coming to check out me, coming to check out JD, Trevi, everyone that's going to be available and bringing the show and making the show a lot better, right? Also, make sure to get a hotel spot at the Holiday Inn. It is discounted. Make sure that you grab a couple of nights of those. You're going to enjoy it. The hotel is very nice. There's actually a restaurant that I was just telling JD the other day. We're going to be in a section that's in the venue itself that's literally you take 10 steps and you're at the restaurant. So you'll be able to get your beverages, as in alcohol and things like that, eat some food and enjoy yourself. Nice and cool, warm, and then you can go to the beach after it's done. So
cool. And again, one other question about the circuit. Are you guys planning on extending it north and west, or is it going to stay more of like a southeastern kind of thing?
That'll be released at NATC. But yes, we do plan on expanding in the region, if you will. Like in the perfect world, we would surround Chattanooga with 4 or 5 events and be able to go all over the United States. This year, again, we did Midwest, we did the middle of the East Coast in Florida. I think if I'll release a little data, I think Florida's here to stay. Florida's a great place, and as long as we find a venue,
better not leave me.
Yeah, we want to keep Florida as one of the mainstays. And we think North Carolina, if you've never been to that venue, is amazing. It's probably one of the better player-centric events with like hotel, food, and drinks, all basically, as Lewis said, in the same area. And then we're going to expand it to 2-3 more regions, and those will kind of get released. I think we'll have dates and all that for it as well. But again, I will say, like, the coolest thing, and Lewis kind of hit on it, is like this is ATC in Florida. So the same terrain that you are playing on, the same head judge, the same judges, the same almost player pack and all that you're using in Florida will be what you use at ATC this year.
That's right.
And that's the coolest thing, is like it's almost like a practice, if you will, before you get to an ATC.
Yeah. Well,
and it's standardized, right? Like you're saying. So it's all standardized. So if you go to the one in Kansas, right, you'll know exactly how Florida is going to be. If you come to the Florida one, you'll know exactly how Chattanooga is going to be. And I love that. I love when it's all standardized and everyone understands. So when they go to one, they go to the finals, it's all the same stuff. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think that'll do well, because I know there's a lot of people who only go to a couple events a year but really love team events. I think they would, like I know I would when I was traveling, instead of going to some of the singles events I went to, I'd substitute the ATC events for that.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do. Like, again, ATC has been amazing. It's been amazing for 15 years, but they've only ever had one a year.
Yep.
And so this is kind of like reaching those areas. Because again, like if you look at a player base and said, hey, if you didn't plan correctly, whether it be, kids, school, life, or whatever, and you couldn't make Chattanooga, you had to wait a whole year for it. And now we're giving teams the opportunity of like, hey, I'd love to go to Chattanooga, but I just can't as a team this year. What's the closest other one? Let's go to Florida, right? And then you get that same experience. So
cool.
Yep. And that's exactly what we talked about, right? JD is bringing something in people's backyard, right? So they get to experience it here in Florida, which is absolutely awesome. So, so we covered a lot of things. Is there anything in particular we're talking about the ATC, WTC side of things? I think we've covered it all, unless you feel like there's anything that you kind of want to detail about that. And then we're going to go to our personal questions about you.
Yeah, if y'all have questions, y'all have any? I mean, y'all have asked some good questions about ATC and WTC. So
if the people have any questions, ask. Make a comment if you have any questions.
Well,
so Gordon says, finding my future wife there. Well, I do have long hair, so.
JD, you said you started in 8th edition?
I did, yes. I walked in my. I'll tell you the fun story is when I was a younger lad, I walked into a game store and saw the Warhammer Fantasy box, like the cities versus orcs, right? And me and my buddy were like, "Oh, we have enough money to buy this. Let's throw our money together and buy this." Bought the box, get home, open it up, and you have to build and paint this thing. We were like, "Nope, we're out." So that thing has sat in a house for 25, 30 years. Fast forward to I was deployed at the moment, and somebody was reading like a Warhammer 40K book, and I was like, "What's that?" And like, "Oh, it's 40K." I was like, "Oh, I think I know what that is." Start reading some. It was like the graphic novels, if you will, which were really cool. It was like the Iron Hand one, if y'all remember that one. And I was like, "Oh man, this is awesome!" Walked into my game store in like midsummer of 17, I think, and I was like, "Hey, I want to play 40K," and they're like, "Stop! 7th edition's ending. 8th is about to start. Wait for that," and then started ever since. So.
I feel jealous of anyone who got to skip 6th and 7th edition.
Oh, that's me. That's me. I was playing a good game then.
Well, it was definitely better than 40K at that point.
Yeah. What it's weird is like I don't have that history of like when a game, when additions happen, they're like, this is it. There's no differences. There's no changes. There's no updates. Like, you have to figure it out. And I think the coolest thing is when I started 8th and 9th and now 10th is like the amount of effort GW puts into like, hey, we're doing dash sheets and updates and all that. And we know like, hey, we only have to survive the 6 months of Eldar before hopefully they get slapped down, or wait another 6 months and get slapped down. So that's always good. But also like organizations, like Frontline Gaming, with their FAQ and all their information, WTC, right? Going like, hey, we know GW can't, answer every question that you want. We'll answer some of them and help out. And like, again, as Lewis said, is like standardization to me is like the best thing. It's like, we talk about in that officiating committee is like, if I could play, in New York and Florida and, Kansas and then Denver and, California, and we all have the same kind of rule sets, there's nothing like I have to relearn. There's no like weird FAQ of like, I can't get out of a transport when it does this. Oh, okay. Right. Like it's the ability to like almost play anywhere and go, cool, we know what we're getting into sort of thing.
Yeah. Cause it used to be very region blocked before the internet, when there was forums and groups, like it was just your local, drive. Like we had 4 events we went to each month, and like but if you went out of state to something else, it was like almost playing a different game.
Yeah. And I mean, it was the same thing of not only playing a different game, but like it might be a different TO having a different ruling, right? Of like, no, I rule it this way. I'm like, well, the last event, they're like, well, this is my event. I can do whatever I want.
Exactly.
Sort of thing. And now having that, I don't want to say policing up, but like the standardization where everybody can talk and go, if you look at the 40K competitive chat, there's an ITC group in there and you can ask questions all day long. Like, how do you all rule this? Or what do y'all think about this? And it helps out.
Yeah. I think so too. Yep. So, all right. So we're a little bit over, which is fine.
Yeah.
Looks like we got some good numbers. A lot of viewers who are watching right now. Yeah, dude. With little sidebar, right? So
we're over time and we're sidebarring. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, we're sidebarring here because just sort of people probably understand this on my end, but they've literally never talked to me on the phone. Me and JD talk like 2 little schoolgirls, right?
Yes.
On the phone. It's like we're back in middle school again, and we're just trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
So, I love it, and I love those.
Not only that, but like the first time we met in person, right? We carried on conversation for an hour. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I need to pull away. Maybe I'm too much, but it's all enjoyable, right? That's what friendships are all about, and I love building those relationships with people. And when you could talk to someone like that, it's a good thing, right? Yeah. It's a very good thing. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, JD. We know who you are, what you do for the ATC circuit. But a little bit more. You're a lot more than doing terrain and things like that. So you do ATC circuits. What else?
So like the one thing I'll say is like it kind of gets lost sometimes. Is like when people say like away games, they just think terrain, right? Like the guys bring terrain, and we do. We bring terrain, in I think we bring beautiful standardized modular terrain, right? Like in the sense of. I would say I'm a terrain, junkie. I'm a, terrainaholic in the sense of like, I like beautiful terrain. One of the things that I will always tell people is like, I think it's unfair if you have these beautiful painted armies, right? That you spent time and money and effort on, and then you play on like brown MDF, right? Yes. Like a tournament and an organization should take as much time and care than their terrain as you do your armies, right? And so that's what we try to do, right? And so we have 6 different designs that we do terrain. But we only don't do just terrain. So we'll bring the dice trays, which I think is a great thing. So now everybody's rolling in the same area if they want. We have all the standardized mats. So like, there's no like tape on the mat or anything, but like the mats fit the terrain, so it's like one big beautiful piece. But away games, so we can do, you know, the judging. I'm the head judge of ATC, but I judge all my events. Lewis, you know, I helped him at Crucible, and I plan on doing that as well. Like, we'll give you that. We'll do all your BCP, all your registration, all that other stuff. Your TOing. We do flyers, marketing, all that kind of coverage and everything. So like, it's not simply, hey, you're just renting a terrain. You're almost kind of renting an experience of like, hey, and we'll go from, you know, we do still RTTs and everything with stores of like, hey, the thing I always like think about stores is there's some stores out there that want to run events, but they don't want to buy, you know, 12 sets of terrain because they only have like, you know, 12 tables, but they're never going to be using 12 sets of terrain at one time, you know, at one day during the week, right? And so what do those stores do? Do they buy terrain and invest, you know, thousands of dollars for terrain that sits on the shelf? Or they can reach out to us and be like, hey, we want to run an event, and we'll work with them to bring all that to them. And so that's one of the things we do with stores. And then when we do events, it could be a club, it could be a store, it could be, you know, Lewis himself. Like I want to call it, you know, the Lewis event. But we'll work with that and bring those events to players that or teams that don't want to invest in that terrain, or you know, they want to run an event, they just want to do a one-off, if you will. And so that's what we try to do is like bring in that experience, that premier event to anywhere and everywhere, right? So whether it be an RTT with 8 players to, you know, the Crucible with 80, 90 players to Richmond Open, what we're doing in a couple of weeks, it could be 150 players, is like that experience from small to big is exactly the same. You'll get that same feel of an event. And it shouldn't just be like, well, I only get this feeling when I go to like super majors, right? Some players may never go to a super major, right? And some players might not venture that far, but so we try to give that experience to everybody that we get involved with.
I love it. So how long have you been playing Warhammer? Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What's up?
Oh yeah. I just wanted to say thank you so much, JD, for and Lewis for bringing this to Florida, because I mean I played ATC the past 2 years, and Teams is a totally different animal than singles 40K, and I've heard this. It's kind of a cliche at this point, but I think that Teams is the best way to play Warhammer. So it's awesome. Thank you for everything you've done.
No, I appreciate it. I know. I will say, like, even on Teams is like, you know, if we looked at it from a growing standpoint, like what's the next evolution or step of 40K, right? We went from ITC, which saved us in those first couple early years of like, how do we play in this game from like a garage to ITC. ITC has kind of evolved to singles, right? And Reese and all them and Kicker did a great job getting it to where it is now, right? And now the kind of next evolution is like, well, what's teams? Like, let's, instead of having one army dominate an event or maybe 2 armies, let's open up to 5 and 8s, right? And that's, I think, the next iteration or wave of where 40K you see it. And then, like, you know, even to say this, like, this is our, you know, our dream or my dream, or, you know, I hope hopefully everybody's dream. But if you wanted to say 40K as an esport, right, to get that next realm, what would it be? It would be a team, right? Because, you know, Lewis has heard this story before, and now it's going to be out in the public. Is like, if you wanted to look at like an event and go, cool, I want to stream something that people are interested in. When you look at the League of Legends and all that, it's not one-on-one, because the second you get table or something, what are you doing for the next 2 hours of this event? If you have 5s and 8s, it's like, cool, this game mattered. Now this game matters, and this matters, and like that is where you can keep those like attention spans of like what's going on, rather than like, hey, it's just one game being focused right now. So
I was actually just going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
So how long have you been playing Warhammer, and what's your day one army? Like, you know, the army that makes you love playing Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, so, you know, I started at the beginning 8th. I'm very, I would say I'm hipster when it comes to armies. So, like, in my play group, I'm like, what is everybody not playing, right? And it was like AdMech. And I was like, cool, I'll play AdMech. I like to shoot. Let's do that. The side note of that is I originally bought, like, a Death Watch army because I thought those were really cool. But it was like the codex isn't coming out forever. They don't really have anything. Like, so it was cool. It's like, yeah, it was all gray, never got, you know, touched. And like, I barely played it even when I got it all, you know, officially painted. So I played AdMech as my first army, and I very much was a hipster. Like, this is it. This is my army. Right. And I added knights here and there. And I enjoyed that all the way up until I think like early 9th. I was like, well, I want to try something new. And I went to knights. And I've played knights ever since. So it's knights is now the only army I technically have. Like I always talk to my friends and jokingly about like, they have like 5 or 6 beautiful armies and this and that. Like they are army rich or model rich. I'm terrain rich. Like I have a bunch of terrain and knights. That's it. That's all I have. So.
So you recently judged and organized an ATC. So that's 8, as in the number ATC. For those of you who are not aware, Warhammer 40K event in Bradley Square Mall, Cleveland, Tennessee. How did that go? How did you feel about that? Tell us a little bit about how you feel.
I thought it went well. Like it was cool to be like the first 8-man in America. Now, lo and behold, it was the second NTL event. They had one in Canada, which went well. I think it was 16 teams. We had 20 teams sold out, 160 players. It's weird to say like it was 20 teams, but it's 160 players, right? Like that's the cool thing about teams. I think it went well. We did 5 rounds. We did like a 1-2-1 or sorry, a 2-2-1 format, which got everybody out early Sunday. No real big issues or rule calls. We had Trevi there from Tax and Forest streaming all that. As Nick said, apparently the coverage is really great. Well, which is awesome. But again, like it's easy to switch through games, right? When you see some other things going on and other personalities and all that. But I think, from my standpoint, it went well. It went smooth, on time, all the other things that need to occur at an event. And I don't think anybody walked away angry or upset with like the rulings and all that we had. And I talked about it earlier. It was probably one of the biggest events after the new 2-inch barrier rule. So that was a good, like, hey, but let's put the 160 players in an event and see what happens, right? And it was big learning on both the judges' part and the players' part. And I will say, like, the ATC judges, I think, are getting better and better because after every ruling, we all got together like, well, why did we rule this way? What was the the question in mind? Cool, well, let's learn from that and then kind of go forward. So.
I love that. I love that educational piece. So speaking of educational pieces, so this is Onslaught Gaming, OCS. Yep. We talk about helping the community, helping them understand the core rules predominantly. Sometimes we do missions. Sometimes we do secondaries. Sometimes we do army factions. What can you teach the community today, or just a little tidbit, any tricks or anything like that could help people out?
I think it's the things we just talked about with pairings, right? Like understanding how especially because we're talking about like teams and all that, and we'll tie it back to the show is like pairings are the biggest thing, right? Of what talk with your team, right? Like figure out what we want to play into and what you don't want to. I think the worst thing a team can do is like have that one player who's off by himself, like just pair me with anything, I don't care. Right. Like I think everybody needs to have a buy-in, whether it just be for fun or even not fun, more competitive, but like everybody getting in and like understanding how the pairing process works and what they want to do, I think is key. And then even before that is like working with your team going, hey, what armies do we need to bring? Right. We all, besides me, I only have one army. We all probably have 2 or 3 armies. And you sure might have your favorite, but like as a team format, maybe you put Thousand Suns on the shelf because you don't think it's a good matchup and some of the other armies that are showing up. So you bring out the Death Guard or vice versa. Right. And that's another cool thing about teams is like talk to your team early, figure out what you think like the meta is and like what you think will benefit the team and go from there. Cause like, that's the biggest thing I will say for like the community and learning for teams is like work together. Right. Like it's like any team you see in the sports, like you could have 1-star player and 4 guys, that are part of the team, but none of them is working together. You're not going to win. But if you get, 5 players that are all working together towards that same goal, that benefits the team as a whole.
Yeah. And I'd say put your people in roles that suit their natural play style.
Yeah.
I've been on teams where like they try to have someone be the defender, but they're a natural aggressive player.
Right.
And they're willing to try to do it for the team, but they're fighting their natural urges every game and end up making mistakes.
Yep. And I mean, again, that's like we talked about when you're pairing, like, I want to be a defender on this table, right? Like these are the things I can bring to the team and like what I know and can give value to the team for versus, as you said, hey, I need you to go hard. Like, I don't know how to go hard. Like, well, you're gonna learn today.
Yeah.
And last thing before we get rolling, any shout outs, anything that you want to tell about yourself or any shout outs you want to do or plugs?
ATC Florida, as we already talked about. I think we're 4 or 5 teams away from sellout. It'd be awesome to have a sellout to show the support there. Away Games itself has a couple events going on. Richmond Open, I think, is we call that like our big one in Virginia. I think we're at 92 players right now, capped at like 150. So if you want to come out there, but like all the shout outs to like everybody who's kind of made Away Games possible, right? My true dear friend Eli, who paints all the terrain for us, had, helped me get where we are today. Big Bear, John. We had this idea when we came to him, March a year or so ago, and like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, all right, we can make this possibly happen. And then all the friends and communities that have supported me along the East Coast, Catherine, who is our artist and designer when it comes to all of our, our flyers and everything that goes on there. And then all of our sponsors that truly kind of got back behind us, like to say, we are like trying to do events and they're like, who are you? And we're like, we're Away Games, right? And they're like, sure, we'll support you. And having that support even from the beginning to make it happen has been great. And like even you, Lewis, like you met me at Crucible and you're like, I don't know who Away Games is, but let's see if this happens. And then it happened, and you're like, yeah, let's continue doing this, right? And then that's the thing I try to bring or try to caveat is like, we're all in this together as a community. We're all coming together, and like if we can make events better and make communities better and like give that great experience to people who might not have a great experience, again, from the RTT level all the way to major, that's what I want to bring. So
I love it. So anyone have any final questions? Let me go to the comment section. All right. Oh, Cameron. Oh my gosh. So Cameron's asking, just to hurt Lewis's head, how are you ruling one-shot weapons with GSC demos on reviving existing units that are still alive, i.e. 10-man uses demos, then 4 die, Icon Ward, revives back D3? Are those, so I guess this is a continuation.
Yeah.
Are those one-shots now, or still no more one-shot until the unit dies, then fully revives with the new unit?
Yeah, go ahead.
I say my opinion is if he's reviving a model, it's still the same model, so how would he have a new thing?
Yeah,
it's not like he makes a new model. He's healing the guy that's wounded. That guy already threw his demo charge.
Yeah, and that's how we rule it too. Is like until the unit dies, and again the unit dies, and it's still one shot. It goes from there.
Correct.
I will say it used to be where they ruled like you can jump in a vehicle and like shoot all day one shots, but they
yes, they did. Yeah. They took that away real quick. I saw that. Yep.
So once
you hear that, Cameron? No.
Yeah, you only get one shot, whether it be. And the other thing is whether it be in the vehicle or not. So if you use a one-shot weapon while you're in a transport, you need to ensure that your opponents are tracking that and you're tracking that, because once it gets out, that one-shot weapon has been used. So
absolutely. And just in case anybody else has any further questions, we're just going to hang around for like a minute or two. See,
Nick has a question.
Got a quick question for you.
Please.
So barricade rule. Let's say there's a bunch of teams in Florida that haven't like played with the barricade rule before.
Yeah.
And the document is great because it's got all the examples. It's very, very clear. If you were going to give, I guess, like a just quick advice for a team, like on the fly, like what's like a tip or trick about the barricade rule, so you can just play a cleaner game.
I mean, the cleanest thing is following the rule and getting a token, right? Because a lot of people are so used to like not having these tokens or playing like through the walls that they start the whole attack process. And then they're like, well, how does this work? And then you realize there's no tokens, so you don't know who's actually fighting. So my one big foot thumper was, hey, use the tokens and use how it's supposed to. Because like once you do the charge, like so you'll measure the charge, you'll make sure that you can make the charge. Once you do there and you get to the end of the charge move, then you start putting your tokens down. And these are the people who can fight and not fight, right? And it's on the defender as well. So like not only is the guy who's charging needs a token, but the guy who's getting charged needs tokens as well, because that dictates who can fight in a phase. And then the second thing I will say is, so they've again 98% sure, but they've eliminated like living in walls now, to where the tokens are what matters, and you don't like exist in a wall anymore. So like the saying of like, oh well, I'm halfway through this wall, so I'm going to fight and then move here. No, you're either on this side of the wall or that side of the wall.
Right, and I know the tokens are so important because it matters on the fight back, because it makes you increasingly more targetable when the enemy goes to fight back.
Yeah,
so,
correct. And then and then learning like, so if I'm not a token and I'm not fighting, where I can move, because there's more movement now without tokens to go get touch objectives and everything. because it's not the same as, you're fighting and going straight to the combat. So learning like those little tips and tricks that go from there. And then practice with your teammates, practice with other teams. We got a month until the event happens, but like get those reps in and like, what would you do in this situation? Like how would this happen? And learning that is big.
And practice pairings.
Practice pairings. So apparently, just a shout out to DDR, right? Dice, Death, and Robots. They're going to be doing basically a practice 3-man event. It's going to be the first Sunday of April. So they're just going to try to help people out get acclimated exactly how the pairings, how the format works, and things like that. I actually talked to the head judge from over there earlier, Todd. Shout out to him and his whole team. I love that. Make sure to help out your people. Do what you got to do. And if you can attend, make sure to attend. Also, I want to give a big, warm thank you to JD for participating today. We love you, bud. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. Also, and not least, right, to our beautiful, beautiful co-host, Nick, right? I can't include Matt in there.
I shaved for this. I'm pretty now.
Yeah.
You're younger now.
Where's the
You're
beard?
younger now. But no, big thank you as always to Nick, Tricky Nick, as we like to call him. Make sure to check out Away Games from JD from Away Games. Check out him on Facebook. Yeah. Give him a call, bug him at 2:00 in the morning to tell him to run an event for you.
Yes.
Also, big shout out to Matt, right, from Almost Functional. Make sure to check out Almost Functional on YouTube. There are some future plans I can't detail right now. I'll let him, kind of break the ice on that if he wants to today. If not, we'll talk about it some other time. But he also does a show, so make sure to go check that out as well. Can't wait for ATC Florida. Love it. Love the community. And for those of you who don't know, I know the last store kind of went away. Don't worry. We have 2 more that's coming back in May. So Onslaught Gaming will have 2 other home locations. So look forward to that and the post for that. Am I forgetting anything? Shout out to Baron of Dice. Shout out to Trevi. Shout out to Hobby Goblins. Shout out to Art of War. Games Workshop. We love you. If you haven't been to WCW, you have to go to WCW. It's an amazing show. And I think that's about it. All right. See everybody. Have a wonderful time.
Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Take care. Love y'all.
What?
Bye, everyone.